Hello, hello. How is everybody? Warm? Yes, it is warm. It is like past warm. It's like August. Isn't that funny how we all say in the summer it's hot? Like we didn't know it was going to be hot. So just want to remind you guys, we are getting ready for back to school. We have a webinar tomorrow night. We want you guys to all join us. You have to go to specialeducationacademy.com and you can register there. It is for Special Strong. They are an entity that works with individuals with disabilities from like 10-year-olds all the way up to if you have an elderly person you're taking care of, and that's going to be a great webinar. So we have Daniel Stein. He's going to be talking about, he has an adaptive program. He has franchises that he has across the nation. He has private one-on-one. He has group for individuals with disabilities, but you guys definitely want to be a part of that. And so let's turn on the volume. All right, so we are ready. Oh, it looks like Cindy and Gina got the matching outfit, and Travis is pretty close. I like it, Picasso. So we are ready. Questions away.
Hey, I'm a gen ed teacher who sat in on some meetings for a student who communicated using sign language. His parents wanted the school district to pay for an OOD placement, out of district placement, because there were no other students at the school who communicated via ASL, and he felt very isolated. He had an interpreter, and there were teachers and staff who used ASL. And his teachers set up opportunities for him to Zoom with other students in the district who used ASL, but his parents said that that was not sufficient for his social development. They declined busing into another school district. Was this being denied fate, or is this a valid reason to request or demand out of district placement?
Well, from what you're saying, they did offer them something out of district. So certainly there is, we certainly honor the deaf and hard of hearing community. And when some of their modality is ASL or ESL, a lot of states have co-ops. So in Texas, we have 605,000 children on an IEP. And I think we have 54 co-ops. And so what they do is they combine a number of school districts. I think in the Houston area, it's 13 school districts. And so in our area closest to us, we have Fort Bend, we have Houston ISD, we have Sci-Fair, so that those students can be educated along with other students who have that modality of language. But I don't know how big this district is. It sounds like the district was trying to propose something so that that student could be with more peers that had the same communication modality. But it wouldn't be grounds for out-of-district placement. I think it's really important that we remember that out-of-district placement is almost always because of a child that has severe, unique emotional needs, psychiatric needs, maybe need to have a high level of adult-to-student ratio for safety, might need to have access to medication or physicians. That's certainly an unfortunate situation, and I certainly have empathy for that. But it sounds like the district was trying to offer them something to mitigate that.
Great, thank you. Our school offered 4 random days for 3 hours each for ESY. They offered regular ed students 2 full weeks of summer school, but said that was invitation only. Is this legal?
So summer school has nothing to do with special education, so you kind of have to put that aside. So ESY, Extended School Year Services, are for students who have an IEP, who have one, documented regression on their IEP goals with a profound amount of time to recoup that skill, or concern for loss of critical skills. There are no parameters at the federal level for sure, or that I've even seen statutory at the state level that say your ESY has to be so many days. Almost always it's at least 2 or 3 weeks, maybe 3 or 4 days of those weeks, but you would be hard pressed to find a statute around that. We have to look at the appropriateness of it, right? So the point of ESY is so that those students don't have this big gap in time. Do 2 days in the summer mitigate that? I would think not. So I would certainly reach out to your state DOE, the Department of Education, and get their response back. You might need to file a state complaint.
Thank you. How do laws change for those who are incarcerated? I work at a youth correctional facility and service students obtaining their GEDs but are under 21. Do the minutes in the IEP still have to be met when facilities are on lockdown?
I mean, I wouldn't be able to answer that question. That's a legal question that includes our students who participate in the juvenile justice system, and we have students that participate in that. Most of myself or our team, we have kiddos that participate in the juvenile justice system for a very short period of time. So I don't know the specifics around that.
Okay. Let's see. I don't know what it starts off with. Her special needs daughter is 18 this year, and she only has a couple of more years where she's going to be in school on a regular basis. I'm trying to help my friend find an out-of-plate home placement for her daughter. Do you know of any consulting firms or companies that consult in situations like this?
So I don't know of companies that consult in like this, but what I would do is I would reach out to your state, even to your state educational agency. They're going to know about, we call them day placements. And so there are a few in Houston, and Houston is a monster city of over 7 million people. They are specific to kids that are greatly impacted by their disability, their functional needs. You certainly should be able to talk to your transition person at your district to see what those places are. But those are all registered with the state. So you should be able to find out that either through your district, through your county, or your state education agency.
In North Carolina, are there class size requirements for adopted classrooms?
Not that I've ever heard of, but we're going to be in North Carolina the 16th for a press conference. We would love to have you all show up for the fanfare. It's going to be in Washington, North Carolina. We have a graphic on all of our platforms, and we'll put it up again.
Excellent. All right. What can you do about a child's IEP when they put the wrong information in it?
So when you say the wrong information, do you mean it's a clerical error? Do you mean it's a clerical error? I mean, if the information was put in wrong about what you agreed upon at the meeting, then you would simply reach out and say, hey, Gina, got the paperwork. Seems to be a clerical error. So we would like to rectify that. Otherwise, just, you're going to call a review IEP, and you can call review IEP at any time. This is a really good time of the year to call a review IEP so that we're all on board with what we all agreed to for this kiddo to be successful.
Is grouping children by ability or diagnosis into their separated classrooms a violation of their civil rights?
It's icky. It's definitely icky. So you will have children that have like needs in self-contained classes, but you certainly have, there's often autism units. There are often self-contained classes for kiddos that have an intellectual disability, kiddos that have medical needs, kiddos that are medically fragile. But we certainly, every child that has autism doesn't need to be in a self-contained autism unit. So we are programming based on the student's unique circumstances and programming based on the least restrictive environment.
I have an upcoming senior, and we have suspected undiagnosed autism. Would it be worth at this point having them evaluated?
So, I mean, if you're on the planet, it's worth being evaluated, right? Because if you do have a disability, that may impact you for a lifetime. And so I was at a training a couple of weeks ago, and I'm actually in Washington, D.C. last week at the Special Education Legislative Summit. And one of the speakers stood up and he said his daughter was diagnosed with autism at 30. And he said it was really a relief. It was a relief for some of the characteristics she displayed. And then it helped them get on a track to better serve her and support her. So I think anytime that I can identify what the foundational need is in a child, whether it's a disability, medical, behavioral, functional, then we have a better way of addressing and serving those needs.
What can I do if the school is refusing to abide by the medical portions of the IEP?
So you don't get to not abide by the IEP. It's a paperwork full of requirements, not suggestions. So I would always first, like myself or any of our partners do, we reach out to the district and say, hey, Travis, it looks like we're not fulfilling this part of the IEP. Let me know when we can expect that to start. And based upon their response, then if their response is we're not going to do that, then certainly you need to exercise your legal rights and use one of your 6 dispute resolution options.
My 7-year-old was diagnosed over the summer with ADHD. How do I go about getting an IEP?
So being diagnosed with ADHD doesn't necessarily mean that you need an IEP, but if you have a disability, then you've already triggered child find. So I would take that identified disability to the district and say, I'm requesting special education testing for my student. He's been diagnosed with ADHD. Areas of suspected disability are attention, learning, behavior, communication, whatever. We look forward to coming in and signing notice and consent.
How hard is it to get where my kid can record his thoughts and then scribe it down for assignments when they have trouble writing?
I mean, it depends. It could be very difficult. It could be depending on how much that child is struggling, the totality of his disabilities, the comorbidity of his disabilities. So if he has language, he could, communicate that. The teacher could give him sentence stems. She could give them topic stems. She could help him and prompt him to get that started. But it just depends on the acuity of the student.
You've said that students don't need to be listed under an eligibility in order to be served for needs. Is there an age limit to this?
So I didn't say it. It's a law. So the law is 300.111D. 300.111D in the federal code, and it's the bottom of child find, and it says a student does not in fact have to be listed by an eligibility to get services. We just need to know as a committee that this student is in need of special education and related services. So that's the federal statute. And the point of it was so that we didn't get into arguments over, well, Travis says this, Gina says this, Christina says this, so that we can serve kiddos. So that's where it is in the law. Tell me the rest of the question, Christina.
How long is there an age limit?
So child find is for children between the ages of 3 and 22.
All right, here's an ESY question. My daughter got ESY to make up missed hours from the school year, but she didn't get any of her services at all during summer school, so they dropped the ball twice. What do I do now?
Yeah, so I saw somebody in the comments say that she doesn't like ESY for compensatory time. I don't, because ESY is ESY. So if a student needs ESY, they need ESY. So I'm not going to say you're due ESY for, let's say, for purposes of this conversation, for 10 hours, and you're due 10 hours of compensatory time. We'll do them at the same time. Those 10 hours don't equal 20, doesn't equal 10. They're two different things to address two different needs. So if ESY did not fulfill its obligation, then again, like anything else, I'm going to go to the school and say, this did not do what we agreed upon in the document, and it didn't feel its obligation under IDEA. How do we rectify that?
How long after my request does an evaluation typically need to be done?
So it's two different timelines, right? So when I request testing, so I'm going to go in and say, hey, this is my formal request for my kiddo to have special education testing. We look forward to coming in and signing notice and consent. Once I've sent that documentation, don't say it at the car pickup line or at the pumpkin patch, do it in writing. That triggers a 15-day timeline. So within 15 days, 15 calendar days, the district, city, or county must respond to you with their response. Their response will either be they will deny the testing or they will grant the testing. If they've granted the testing, then they need you to come in and sign notice and consent. So get there as quickly as you can and get notice and consent signed. The day you sign notice and consent starts your state's timeline. So depending on where you are in the United States, it's 30 days, 60 days, or 45 school days, right? That's a lot of time. So you want to be efficient with it. And so after those dates are completed, and we want the district to take the time that they need to do the totality of the evaluations, then the district has a month to come to the table and review all those documentations, see if we need to update the IEP, write an IEP, or DNQ them, does not qualify.
Can you opt out of accelerated classes when in an ARD if they failed the STAR test in Texas?
Oh, the stinking STAR test. Who cares about state testing? I guess the people that work there. I don't care about state testing. I'm 100 years old. Nobody asked me this week, how'd you do on your state testing in 1984? I don't know. I guess I passed. I don't know. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. So you don't have to do that. So the actual law says that the district has to notify you that, Bob didn't pass it and offer you tutoring. It's not accelerated tutoring. It is grade level tutoring. Well, here's the thing. Most of my kiddos who are in special ed that didn't pass the state test, they're not at grade level. So actually what they need is not grade. We already got it. They didn't do grade level. So why would you give them more grade level? Why wouldn't you offer them something that fills in those gaps? So for me, for my clients, unless they're just so excited about it, I'm going to say thank you for that offer. But at this point, we're declining those minutes, understanding that, Dallas Independent School District is ready, willing, and able to give Nate these minutes should the family want them.
I have a junior going into high school this year in an IEP. Any advice when it comes to transition?
Stay student focused. I would, we're about to do a YouTube video of this. It'll go out in a couple weeks. You gotta prepare the staff members for your student. Schools are crazy busy. They're overworked. They're underpaid. We love teachers. I think they have a week of professional development, and here's your 500 kids that you're going to teach algebra to, right? So if I had a child in special education, I'd be like, hey, Miss Algebra teacher, here's Billy's IEP. Here's their accommodations. Let me know if you need anything. Here, Mr. English 1 teacher, here's Billy's IEP. Here's his accommodations. Let me know if you need anything. Because at least that way I know that my kiddo's teachers have his IEP. Because teachers teach a lot of kiddos, and I don't want my kid to get lost.
I have students that are 3+ grade levels behind and only 30 minutes for intervention. What do we do? This is from a teacher.
You just do the best that you can. That's, you can only deliver what was agreed to in the paperwork. And if that's what the committee agreed to, then you deliver that. And, it's what myself and our partners do every day. I had a kiddo this week, and he is at a kindergarten level, and we've been doing a couple of minutes, it's more than a couple, maybe 20-30 minutes a day for math and reading, and he's going into 4th grade. I said, so we're going to switch that. That's not quite how I said it. I didn't say it quite like that. I said, so based upon his numbers, he needs full-time resource for ELA reading and math. And they said, okay, you need somebody to go with you. You need to be able to articulate your position based on legal evidence, the data, and then not move off of that. Parents are so easily swayed at meetings, even with myself or one of our team members. Like, we're just so easily swayed because we so want to hear something good about our kiddo. He's adorable. He's so nice to Miss Gina. Mr. Travis loves him. He can't read. He is illiterate. And that's one of the reasons that people take an advocate, because we talk about uncomfortable truths in a way that people keep listening. It's hard to say that a child's illiterate, but if we don't say that, then he's not going to be successful as an adult. And we have to do what's right by kids.
I would like to transfer my son to another district because his home district can't accommodate him. I'm wondering if there is a specific way to request that.
So when you're talking about district to district, a lot of things have to happen legally. I think I've only had that happen one time, and it was after what attorneys would call a divorce agreement, after a mediation. And my client, I'm not an attorney, but 2 things have to happen. The District A, has to release said student and his funding, and then District B has to accept him. So let's say that happened, right? That's for a finite period of time. It's not forever. So really, really, really would caution any family on doing that. I would do everything that I could to work it out in this district. And if you really think that your child needs to go to another district, then you're going to have to be a resident of that district to make sure that you're not worrying every year if he's going to be kicked out.
I know that you can file with the Office of Civil Rights when a school doesn't provide accommodations that are in the IEP. What other instances would you file with OCR?
That's a really good question. We have a 5.5-hour training that you can access on Special Education Academy. It would probably be a really good investment for you. It's not a short answer. There's very specific ways that you file with the Office of Civil Rights. So if you go to ed.gov, and you get the CPM, the Case Processing Manual, and there's a printout there that tells you what they file on, discrimination based on sex, race, nationality, gender, disability, all sorts of things. But it's a very specific way that you file with them. There's more things that they don't look at in an IEP. So they're not going to look at placement. They're not going to look at eligibility. They're not going to look at a PLAF. They're not going to say this is a bad IEP goal. They're not going to do that. So the overarching umbrella when you file on disability based on discrimination based on disability for the Office of Civil Rights is a failure to implement, thus causing a denial of FAPE. And that can exist inside of a 504, and it also exists inside of an IEP. But it's a lot to learn, so that's why we made the multi-part training so that you guys would have that.
My district, now hold on to yourself here, Karen. My district eliminated IEPs for all students in science and social studies. They literally wiped them out with one broad stroke. If anyone moves to our district, they take a Sharpie marker and cross out those subjects. This is a New Jersey middle school. First question she has, is this legal?
Okay, there's no Sharpie in IEP. So what you need to do is you need to notify the state of New Jersey and notify them that ABC District has taken a Sharpie and eliminating unilaterally content areas impacting children with disabilities. That would get an audit in a hot minute.
She is the gen ed teacher. So her second part of the question is, can they still make me, the regular education teacher, sign IEPs for special education students that I teach alone with no special ed teacher helping and make me legally commit to follow them?
So you probably need to find an amazing advocate or somebody to file. This is all an audit issue. You work for somebody. I don't work for anybody, but I'm sure if I did work for somebody, I'd have to do what they told me to do. And as I understand teaching, which I know very little, God bless teachers, but we have, probably a fifth of our clients are teachers. If you want to keep your job, you have to do what your boss says. That's terrible because it's unethical. I don't know if you have a teachers union, but I would, one of the things that our team members do is we file all over the nation for a variety of people. So that might be something you would want to look into. So you can just email us to see if that's a fit for you at advocate@specialeducationacademy.com.
How would you approach a family demanding 1 hour of speech and 1 hour of OT per day plus a full-time RBT? Parents refuse to sign previous IEP and they are new to my school with a kindergarten student.
So there's no demanding in school. There's no that's insane. This is not a hostage situation. There is no child in public school that needs an hour of speech 5 days a week. And let me explain that. Because in public school, we have an onus, duty, and responsibility to deliver them a robust IEP, right? So I only have 360 minutes in the instructional day, something like that. So when I take away an hour from that student to have speech, then he's missing something else. There's only so much pie to go around. And so I understand that people want related instructional services, but we do it in a way in public school that doesn't impact their behavioral needs, their academic needs, their functional needs, their community needs, and their social needs. And so while that might be a model at ABA, that might be a model at private school, that might be a therapeutic model or a medical model, it is not a model in public school.
Can a student receiving dyslexia services at an IB elementary school be pulled from Spanish for dyslexia therapy?
First of all, can I just say, there's never really a first of all with me. There's a 20 of all. Ugh. I'm concerned about, this LOAT requirement that we have in America. Language other than English, right? I got an A in 1983 and 1984 in Spanish. I can't even order breakfast. So let's work on English. So that's obviously, if you're struggling with English language, I don't know why we have them in dyslexia. Would it be appropriate to pull them during Spanish? No, it would be appropriate to pull them during their English reading class. Olay, how was that? Was that good at me?
Yes. I have a self-contained high school classroom. Our vocational director does not want my students taking vocational classes. He says it's not safe. What can I do to keep my students in these classes? This year I have several going to an ag class.
So I have kiddos that are in wheelchairs that go to ag classes. I have a kiddo in a wheelchair who showed his goat. That sounds like it's not even real, but he showed his goat at the Houston rodeo. He did great. So obviously students with disabilities may need support in those classes. I thought you were going to say like they were using a beaker or a flamethrower, but it's Texas. Children of all ages and needs are good with animals. So maybe the teacher needs support, but no, all children should have access to vocational classes with the right support.
All right, must parents wait for school to collect data, do RTI before evaluating for special education?
Not in America. No, doesn't say that. Otherwise, it would be like at the very beginning. We got this little book. Have you guys seen this book? This is a really good book. You should ask at your next IEP meeting. Before we start the IEP meeting, I would like for you to go get the federal code. Do that at your next meeting. I don't feel comfortable starting this IEP meeting until the school gets their IDEA book. We'll wait. It'll be a while. So in the very beginning of this book, it says, it's the very first law. We are charged with identifying, locating, and evaluating children who have suspected disabilities and may be in need of special education and related services. That's it. It doesn't have a caveat. It doesn't say you do this first, run to first base, hold your breath, get a hula hoop. Doesn't say any of that. If a child has a suspected disability, we are charged with testing them. So all that does is penalize the student. While you're certainly welcome to RTI, SST, MTSS, UPS, FedEx, OPI them while we're testing, it doesn't delay testing. So when somebody says something goofy, my love, this is what you say. Since you're choosing to deny my child testing, please provide me that denial in a prior written notice by close of business. And then you add the word muffin on the end.
All right. Can I request a staff member not be involved in my child's IEP meeting?
No. So you can certainly request if there's a staff member. Thanks you guys for the gifts. If there's a staff member that is making the meeting hard for people. So let's say that Travis is your diagnostician and he's just never in a good mood. And he makes it really hard to get through the meetings. Then I might reach out to the district and say, could somebody else in Travis's role step in for him during our meetings? Now, Travis is probably still going to be there. Maybe he could use a little bit of training. But I can't say I don't want him to ever be there. But I would say his role in the meetings are really preventing us from making any progress in the IEP process.
If a parent requests a student with Down syndrome who's placed in Gen Ed Kinder to have a one-to-one, can we do that?
Who's requesting the one-to-one?
The parent.
Okay, so I understand why parents want a one-to-one. It is the most supported, it is the most restrictive setting. I can count very little in almost 3 decades of doing this, children that needed a one-to-one. Like, are you with your Down syndrome child in your house? One-to-one every minute they're awake? Probably not, right? You could probably be doing dishes while they're playing on the floor. So I understand that there are times when they need support, they need a high level of support, and they need one-on-one. So then let's go through those content areas and see where that is. So we come in the morning to Miss Gina's class and we have carpet time and music. He doesn't need somebody sitting on by his hip. He doesn't need that. Now when we move to reading, that may not be his favorite thing, and he might need somebody to redirect him, to help him get back with his friends. But a one-to-one is so restrictive. And so we deliver special education, we teach strategies, and then we fade that when it's successful.
What are the two things we're looking for ESY? School said it's only for.
Oh, the school, we lost you at the end. You want to repeat that?
Oh.
Yeah.
What are the two things we look for to qualify for ESY? Our district says it's only for regression.
Yeah. That's a pants on fire thing right there. So two things. So ESY is for students who have documented regression with a profound amount of time to recoup those skills on IEP goals. Pretty rare that you're going to find that. Number two criteria is that we are concerned as a committee for loss of critical skills, right? He's learned this skill, a behavior skill, a reading skill, a writing skill, Braille, O&M, caning, whatever he's learned that was critical for him. And we're concerned with this gap that exists in the summer, 9, 10, 11, 12 weeks, with that gap with no instruction, that we're going to lose those very important things that we've gained. So make sure that the team is having a conversation about those two criteria.
Erin, can you tell us about the webinar tomorrow night?
I can tell you about the webinar tomorrow night. Oh my God, it's so excited. So Daniel Stein is the founder of Special Strong, and it's amazing. There's so few organizations, corporations that help and serve individuals with disabilities, especially post-secondary. And so he works with disabilities. He's the adaptive king. And so whether you have a youngster, a teenager, an adult, somebody that you're caring for in your home that has a disability, he works with them in an adaptive way in the community, in exercising and progressing so that they are well physically, so they can do all of those things, post-secondary, gainful employment, independent living, and further education. So he has locations across the United States, and then globally he teaches adaptive certification and certifies trainers all over the globe. So we're so excited for you to meet him and learn about this great work that they've been doing for, I think, 13 years. So you'll need to go to specialeducationacademy.com, register for the webinar. It's free. Certainly see you at 7 o'clock on August the 7th. If you can't be there, of course, like always, we will send you the recording, but you want to be there.
Great, thank you. Okay, the next question. My daughter was supposed to receive 4 weeks of ESY services this summer with 4 hours each day. The school contacted me and said that they do not have an aide for him to sit on the bus. That's a 45-minute drive each way, and they offered to pay me to transport him. I was unable to do so. He received nothing for ESY. Is there anything I can do?
Yeah, I mean, he was denied ESY. You have no obligation to implement any part of the IEP. Transportation is a related service under IDEA. We certainly appreciate that offer, but it was unreasonable for us to do that. So he was denied FAPE. He was denied his extended school year services. We are looking forward to you providing us a compensatory package to mitigate that.
All right, do you think it is more effective to file a complaint with the state or with OCR?
It's a really, really, really good question. It depends greatly. So what the state would look at is not what OCR would look at, and what OCR would look at is not what the state would look at. So they're two totally different things. And so that's the reason we have the trainings online. The OCR training is really going to be very helpful for you. You get to keep the training forever. It's a very different modality. We love the Office of Civil Rights. They are federal attorneys, and they are no joke. But there's a very specific way that you have to file with them, interview with them, rebuttal with them, those sorts of things, and provide them correct documentation. A state complaint is going to be looking at, was there a failure did you deny them FAPE based on the IEP, the instructional minutes, predetermination, all of those pieces that are part of the procedural safeguards parent rights that you get at the beginning of the meeting. We're about to start a new series in a couple of weeks, parents' legal procedural rights and safeguards, so you can remember those rights that you have. You only have rights that you know about and that you execute.
What can I request for help with my daughter's autism if we only have her currently listed under OHI?
Nothing. If you want services around autism, you would need that autism eligibility. So if she has behaviors or characteristics of autism that impede her at school, that's what you need to bring forward when you're asking for a consideration of an eligibility, right? So those 16 characteristics of autism, some of them overlap with those 16 characteristics that go with ADHD, inattention, or hyperactivity, or combined. And so you need to tease those two pieces out. Are you wanting to have social skills? Are you wanting to have pragmatic language? Are you wanting her to be in a lunch bunch? Are you wanting her to have reciprocal conversation? Those sorts of pieces that may not exist solely in an OHI eligibility. So somebody said, wait. Somebody said, oh, Karen, I like the oh, Karen. You know categories do not drive services. So I didn't say a category drives services, but the characteristics of the category are what we serve. So certainly if you have an eligibility of autism, you would be serving the characteristics of those.
I have a daughter in 12th grade and she's being held back. All this year I've asked the school to help with an evaluation and nothing. Is there anything I can do?
So you asked for an evaluation and they never did it? Is that what she's saying?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tish.
So did you ask for it or did you put it in writing? Because those are two different things. So sometimes we ask and we just say, hey, are you going to get to that? Are you going to get to that? And teachers or somebody says, we're keeping an eye on him. He's doing great. We're going to get this new teacher. But if you have it in writing and they didn't do the evaluation, then they're out of timeline, which is a violation under the Office of Civil Rights and under IDEA for a state complaint.
How do you feel about a child repeating 2nd grade? And if they are turning, so they have a late birthday and they have an IEP?
So depending on what state you're in, like Louisiana and Florida, they're not making kids repeat grades. I don't really know why. And they just don't have the foundational pieces. And we think that would be purposeful for them to repeat it. There are certainly unique circumstances. There are kids that are hospitalized. They're not at school. They were horribly sick. But we have to look at, does a child have a disability or does a child need to have that instruction again? So if they have a disability, then we can make adjustments to the learner expectation and have them continue with their same age peers. Yes, Gina?
My daughter was removed from school the last week in May to go to a hospital for her mental health. She will be heading back to school in August. Is there anything we should do to help her transition back into school? She has a 504 because the school says she doesn't need an IEP.
Don't even get me started on that. So, certainly I would provide, if you have any summary notes from the clinicians or the physicians that worked with her, if there's any indications, if she needs breaks, if she needs all sorts of other things, we want to provide the district with that. I would, based upon her being hospitalized, that more than triggers child find. So I assume that she was hospitalized for an identified medical condition. So if you have a disability, it triggers child find. So child find says that we test for kids who have suspected disabilities. If you have an identified disability, which you already have in a 504, there should be testing. And if they fail to test, please provide that denial of testing with a known disability and a prior written notice by close of business.
All right. Our district is going to the discrepancy model.
Oh, they're going there like on a bus. We're leaving Thursday for the discrepancy model.
Yes, in the jalopy. We're nervous. Any advice?
Okay, so let's talk about the discrepancy model. So the severe discrepancy model language was actually removed from IDEA in the 2004 reenactment. So I assume, because I'm an assumer that you're talking about an eligibility for an SLD. eligibility for an SLD can be arrived at in a number of ways. We're not limited by a discrepancy model. We're going to look at the information from Gina and Cindy and Travis. We're looking at the totality of all of the input, but we're headed to a discrepancy model. It gives me the hives. I would reach out to your state and see if they're also heading to the discrepancy model or if this is just a school-based trip.
A field trip.
It's a field trip. We do not get matching outfits.
No. Can inclusion teachers for a SPED student in a core high school classroom be a non-certified teacher?
A general ed teacher or a special ed teacher?
Can an inclusion teacher for a special education student in a high school core class be a non-certified teacher?
So you could have a paraprofessional in your class for the inclusion model. However, they have to be supervised and or under the watchful eye of a special educator who has first worked with that student, identified their needs, and can help you work on delivering and replicating, working on their IEP goals.
Can a special education student with dyslexia who needs Wilson be taught by a non-Wilson certified teacher?
So we don't get into name brands in public education. We are required to have a program that's research-based that your state accepted and the schools then purchase for them. So I don't know that states, counties, districts, or cities require for you to be Wilson trained to implement the Wilson reading program any more than you need to be NIHouse trained if they pick NIHouse. So that would be something that you would have to ask the Department of Education for your state.
Can a teacher who is still in school and does not have a special education certification teach in a classroom?
She could teach what?
Special education.
So the federal...
It's student teacher, it sounds like.
Yeah, so the federal law 300.156 says lists the requirements to be a special educator in the United States of America. We've never gotten exemption, pass, or waiver on any of that, not even during COVID. Along with that legal statute is a letter October 4th, 2022 that says from OSEP, Office of Special Education Programs, that reminds school districts, hey, we're hearing from advocates, parent groups, that you guys have teachers in rooms providing special education by teachers who are not special educators. That's illegal. It's always been illegal. It's probably always going to be illegal. So on those sorts of things, we certainly get great traction on federal complaints or state complaints.
As a parent, what can we do when the, quote, does not agree on an accommodation for a 504?
You broke up a little bit. So what do we do when?
What do we do when the team does not agree on an accommodation for a 504?
Get to agreement. So here's one thing that I think is kind of funny, and I live for funny. I have never seen more wound tight people than people in charge of the 504. And I know you're gonna be unhappy if you're the they take their 504 like to a whole nother level. Like, it's an accommodation, ma'am. It's not sweet and sour sauce. You don't need to charge me 25 cents for it. I've been in 504 meetings that were longer than my first wedding. I don't know if we have data to support that. Like, calm down. We're trying to help kids, not like, what are we doing to withhold? Like, who is it hurting? Like, whose paycheck is this coming out of? Let's provide the accommodation. If we have data that we didn't need it, then take it away later. But we argue about the silliest things. Yes, as Andrea said, so ridiculous. Ridiculous. Ridiculous, ridiculous, ridiculous.
It is. All right. What is the best way to get pre-vocational present levels for a student? This is a resource teacher asking.
Pre-vocational, that was a mouthful. Say that again.
Pre-vocational present levels.
So present levels are present levels. So what does the students need in that area? So we can have 5-year-olds or 22-year-olds have vocational goals. So what is it about their disability that requires that we need to look as a committee at vocational needs, period, right? Do they have a functional need? Do they have a behavioral need? Do they have a cognitive deficit? Do they have a need in ambulating and hearing, vision, right? What are those things that we need? And then what are those that we could write that are appropriate based on their age? If they're 3, we're probably not having them fill out forms to go to college. So it might be wash your hands, dry your hands, brush your teeth, those sorts of things. So it's based upon where they are, their age, their disability, and what they're going to need to be post-secondary successful for gainful employment, independent living, and further education.
My district has hired adjunct instructors to teach special education. Is that legal?
Adjunct. Is that like when you add junk to your cart? I don't even know. I'm just kidding. It doesn't matter. You could be the president of the United States. You could be the president of the United Nations. You could be the Surgeon General. You could be a medical doctor. If you are not a special educator in your state, you're not. It's not personal. It's business. It's the business of educating a student with disabilities. So I have friends that are medical professionals in Texas, but they can't be licensed specialists in school psychology in Texas. So the requirement to be a special educator is that you are an educator first in your state, and then you take a special education training course, series, test, and you pass that. And then they put your name on the state's website and they say, Gina Smith, special educator, Texas. And your name is either on there or it's not. Gina, is your name on there? Gina Smith. That's what it says. Of course.
Is there emergency placement for students? It says of our country, specifically Texas, documentation provided. I think they're asking about self-contained placement, like an emergency self-contained placement.
There's no such thing as an emergency anything. There's a young man on here that is now doing TikToks, which I am excited about. He's with a law firm, a very big law firm in Texas. And I'm very excited. He's doing a good job, so I hope he sees this. But there's not an emergency in special education. So we have crisis sometimes with emotional or behavioral needs in school buildings, but there's not emergency placements. We make decisions in IEP based on 1 4-letter word data.
All right, what accommodations can I suggest for a 3-year-old with autism who is currently non-speaking?
I mean, that's a loaded question, right? So every 3-year-old with autism that's non-speaking is a different kiddo. So you could be autistic, 3 years old and non-speaking, and be the coolest kid in the room. And you could be a 3-year-old who's non-speaking and could be trying out for the Olympic pole vaulting team, right? So it just depends on how they show up, right? So we write an IEP or accommodations around how the student's disability impacts them in settings, right? So an accommodation is something that we add additionally because we know without that accommodation, they're not going to make expected gains on their IEP goals, right? And so it's something that the teacher's not doing for everybody else, but we know that this little amazing cherub needs this to be successful.
All right, this is a comment. Heather says, as a school district attorney, the state complaints are much scarier for the districts.
Thank you. Can Heather call us on our bat line? You know, and it's not about, we want, I think, school district attorneys, I think school districts, I think almost everybody in education wants change in special education. We're not going to get that until we have a voice for it. Whining at the volleyball game is not a voice. And so the wonderful Dr. Justin Porter, who's the special education director for Texas, said, Karen, parents don't complain. People don't complain legally, right? So until it sits on his desk, until it sits on the superintendent's desk, I know that you think that they know about it. They don't know about it. A billion things happen in a school district every single day.
What if there's a hesitation to file because I'm also a school district employee?
Yeah, don't. If you're a school district attorney, get representation. I mean, I think one of the best investments you can do is get an advocate. And here's why. Nobody would say, hey, I just want to let you know that me and my husband are selling my house. We got a realtor. Oh, you got a realtor? Why would you do that? Because we don't know the legalities of selling a house. You don't know the legalities of special education unless that's what you do every day for a living. And so you're outmanned. And so, I always say, and my partners say, when we get into this meeting, You're going to be the parent and I'm going to be the advocate. It is nice when those roles are separated. There's so much pressure on parents in these meetings. And even if you just had one of our partners do a records review and they could go, this looks good, ask for an adjustment on this, get a running record here, get a goal for words correct per minute. I had an IEP the other day. The child cannot write. He can barely hold a pencil. And guess how many writing goals he has in 5th grade? Say it with me. None. So I said, let's add a writing goal. Now? Yeah. Now, 4 years ago would have been good, but now. You just don't know what you don't know. And these kids don't get time back. It's not like you bought a jalopy and your next car is going to be a great one. This is your child. They need for you to intervene for them. Go with somebody who's sane in the membrane. Maybe you have a friend that's a retired teacher, but take somebody with you. It is too important for you to know what's going on with your kiddo.
So, what can you tell us about the Academy?
It is for all the good-looking, amazing people. And so we want you guys to join us. So the Academy is every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Central. We train for an hour on federal requirements, state law, the spirit of the law, the letter of the law, and resource you guys so that when you go into meetings, however you sit at the 504 IEP table, that you are sharing clean, clear, descriptive things that move the child's outcomes. It's all about one thing, successful student outcomes. And then we open it up for questions from hairspray to manifestation, determination, resolution meetings. So we want you to join us. There's over 250 hours of archived trainings. We've had them for over 3 years. So when you get on the Academy, you have access to that. So you just go to Special Education Academy, go to the training tab, you sign up for it, you put in your payment information, you put in TikTok Live in all caps and the coupon code, and you'll get 15 days for free if you'd like to stay with us. We would love for you to stay with us. You can stay as long as you want or as little as you want. And if you don't, you just cancel, and then we'll see you next time you come back. And Christina is talking muted. We call that very soft.
Very soft spoken.
Soft spoken. She's not like that in an IEP meeting.
No.
I've heard about it. I've had people type letters about her, which is so funny because she's so nice. And that advocate, full of questions. Can you imagine if you hired an advocate and they were like this? Oh, Christina already had one of those advocates. She did twirl her hair though. She did, and she swiveled. Her first advocate was a hair twirling swiveler, which is, that's a double, those are big numbers at the Olympics. Twirling and swiveling, it's not an easy task.
No.
While wearing her Coldwater Creek zip-up shirt with autumn leaves sewn on it. But I've let it go. I just want to say that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Who we muted during IEP meetings.
Can you imagine if you have an advocate that you have to mute? It's true.
All right. I do have to share this really quickly. A client of mine shared today that in her very north Alabama district, the boys start on one day of the week and the girls start on a different day of the week.
Is it too much for the girls to be around all of those boys wearing that body spray, that Axe body spray?
Seriously, I said, well, do they end on different days? Nope. Same time, so somebody's getting less minutes.
Yeah. So the boys need a little extra time. Is that what we're saying?
And, I think apparently they need a little extra time, but they've got a lot of jumbotrons for football.
You need jumbotrons. You don't want to see people running around in polyester in little tiny pictures.
You do not.
Mm-mm.
All right, my student is DHH. Does that mean that they need an interpreter during the entire school day?
They might be DHH and not need an interpreter at all. It depends on the acuity of their hearing loss. So deaf and hard of hearing is a range. The acuity of their hearing loss, even with correction, impacts their ability to access a general ed curriculum. So they might need an amplification system. They might need proximity. They might need anything all the way up to hearing aids that need to be checked daily, all the way up to an interpreter. It just depends on the severity of it based on the audiology reports. I'm not going to say that again. The reports. Those reports.
Those reports.
Yes.
All right. How do I choose between filing a state or a federal complaint? Still
a good question. It depends on what you're filing on. So again, the Office of Civil Rights, which is why we have that training there for you guys. It's very specific what you file, and if you file it wrong, what do, boys and girls? Dismiss it. We don't do that. We don't do that. We don't do that. They're a great mechanism. They're a federal entity. State complaints have to be very specific. They're both done very differently. So what I can tell you about both of them is you get one chance to file. You need to file on procedural violations that are applicable for that entity. So state complaints cover something, federal complaints cover something. So if you go to the Office of Civil Rights, go to ed.gov and go to case processing manual. You can print it out and they will give you a very long description of what they cover. However, when you say they cover discrimination based on disability, and when I first started filing a decade ago, I was like, this is great, except we don't do that, except we don't do that, we don't do that, we don't do that. So they're a very great entity for change, but you have to do it correctly. And you have to do it correctly when you do a state complaint. So both of those things are content that you can get from our website.
All right. Is there a category that dyslexia falls under to qualify for an IEP? Our district said no.
Say that again.
Is there a category that dyslexia falls under in order to qualify for an IEP? Our school district said no.
Well, your school district's a banana head. So based on the severity of the dyslexia, it certainly could rise to the level of being special education. There are some kiddos that have such severe dyslexia, right? And so there's 4 areas that could be an SLD in reading: dyslexia, phonemic awareness, decoding, basic reading, that ability to take apart a word, put it back together with fluency and automaticity. Reading fluency, that WCPM, words correct per minute, which we know is the bridge to comprehension, and then reading comprehension. But to say that dyslexia would never need specially designed instruction is when you would go to the Dollar General and do it quickly because the summer's cutting over, and grab a pool noodle and ba-bam. Yeah, that's goofy. There's a lot of goofy in schools. I don't know if it's a class you take or it's just free with purchase. I don't know.
It's free. They're giving it out.
Is it with your parking pass? You get a goofy pass? Okay. I didn't know.
My district is getting rid of speech-only IEPs for ECSE to kindergarten. So ECSE and kindergarten students that are in the 4th percentile for articulation.
They just evaporate?
Yes.
So I would reach out to your Department of Education. Just want to confirm, I heard this sounds inappropriate, that you've eliminated this category and this threshold. Now, that being said, speech eligibility has become harder to achieve in public schools since I began in the 1900s. But if you're in the 4th percentile, we can all agree that you're in need of specially designed instruction.
All right, my last one. How can we get you to come talk to my school?
Oh, I'm a great school talker, so I'm available to fly from sea to shining sea. As we send out our information for what I need to go somewhere, whether it's a press conference, personal development, professional development, anything. I need the hotel room hall to face carpet, not the parking lot. So if that's something that you're interested in, just reach out to advocate@specialeducationacademy.com.
Hey, Karen, before you get off,
Yeah.
Jess wanted to say, I hope your trip in D.C. was successful. It was wonderful to meet you. Jess Purdue from Ohio.
Oh, thank you, Jess. It was nice to meet all of you guys. We had a great time. Can we just talk about, Jess, that breakfast taco thing? What was that? They needed like the breakfast taco was like a tunnel of egg powder. We left it on our plate. It was fantastic. Yeah, it was a great conference. Okay, so are we free to move about the country? So, no? Oh, yes, no?
Yeah, you're good. Go.
Okay, we're good. Go. All right, so we will see you guys in the academy. If you need anything, let us know. Remember, we get it right with the child, we get it right for everybody. We'll see you guys in the next training.